Now in the following, we're going to talk about the constant variables. So constant variables remain constant, and if once you define it, you're not gonna be able to change it, and if you try to change it, you will face an error. So here I want to define a new variable, const c, for example, and I can define this to be, it can be a string this time, not a number. So for example, const, and I can change this one to name. So no name changes. So most of the time when we want to, for example, define a name, we can use const. So for example, the name is James, and so here I try to change the name and make it equal to, for example, another name, John, for example. As you can see here, we have a line on the name, which shows that this is forbidden in JavaScript. So if I save this code and run our template, which was variables, so here I want to inspect the elements and let us see the console. As you can see, we've got an error, and what it says is about the constant variable. So you cannot assign a new value to the constant variable. So here we've got the result as we've expected. So here let me comment this one and leave a comment for this is not in the next line. Let me do that in the next line. So the above statement throws an error. Okay, so up to now we've got familiar with the different kinds of variables, and so we have constant variables, var and let, and we've explained fully about var and let in the previous parts. Up to now we've talked about the strings and also the numbers, but what if we have arrays in JavaScript, which we're going to explain in more detail in the future, but right now, because it can be a constant variable, so we can define a constant array, and I'm going to call this array as well. So also let me change it to, for example, array of people, and okay, so here let me write the names of different people. So for example, we have James again, and we have Sarah, we have other names like Andy, and so on. So here, if I change any part of any one of these variables inside of this array, any of the objects inside of these arrays, something that happens here is that we're going to face an error. So for example, we have array of people, and then notice that here we don't have that problem anymore, because this is an array and it's not a variable. So remember that when we wrote name equals, we face this error right here, but now after writing array of people, we still have no error, because we might add something to the array, and that's going to be no problem. However, it is const, still we have the chance to add something to it. But if you want to modify the array except adding something to it, except from adding an object to it, it's going to be a problem. So for example, if we have this array right here and we want to add something else to the array. So for example, we can have another name, for example Philip, and as you can see, there's no problem, there's no error. If I save this code and refresh the page, let us see what happens. There we've got an error and it could be related to something else. Let me check the code. So could be related to something else, I think, because right now we shouldn't have a problem. Anyway, I'm going to check that later, but also imagine that, remember that if you want to push a new object to the array constant variable, there's not going to be an error. So if I console.log array of people, console.log array of people, and save this code, let us refresh the page, and there should be a problem here. Let us see. So okay, this is not forbidden, but because we haven't written it in a way to push this, and here JavaScript has said that, okay, we've modified the array. So in order to make it work for us, in order to push a new object to the array, I can use push, and here I can add the item that I'm going to add. So for example, it is Philip, so let us write Philip. Okay, let us save this and see what happens. Okay, there's no more error here. Okay, so it shouldn't seem for JavaScript in a way that you're going to modify the array. So here we had James, Sarah, and Andy. If we want to add something to it, for example Philip, we shouldn't rewrite the array, because in that way, however, it's the same as pushing a new item to the array. It would seem to JavaScript that you are modifying the whole array, and for example, you might be also changing Sarah with another name. And let us try that one as well. So let us write const array of people equals, and here we can write, we can totally change this. For example, we can write James only. James here. Let us save this, and as you can see, we've got a problem. We can see the error right here, because and it says that cannot redeclare blocked scope variable. And okay, here, because we've written const twice, that's the problem. But if I save this code, as you can see, there is no error in the code editor, but once we go into the Google Chrome, we'll see that there is an error right here. So the code editor doesn't show any error, but we actually have an error. So sometimes that happens, and do not just count on the code editor, which is here VS Code, and always try to check the whole code from the browser. So now I want to talk about something else, and that is the blocks here, block scope for constant variables. So as you can see, we have done this for variables var and let variables, and we've put it in a block and saw that whether we have local and global variables, and const variables are just like in that, from that perspective, they're like let. So for example, we have a const variable, for example c equals 18, and then we have a block here. Inside of the block, you can write c equals 12, and then we can, and as you can see here, we have no problem. So we have no error shown by the code editor, opposite to this name here that we had a problem. So we have C here as local and C here as global, and as a result we're not gonna have any problem. So console.log C, and let's see if we have any problem. Also, let's see what C is going to be. So for example, if C is 18, we have the local and global scope for C, but if C is 12, then we have no such thing as global or local, and it's all the same. Let us also console.log from here and put C inside of it. So let's save the code and check the Google Chrome. Inspect the elements. Oh, here we have the error for the James, and I haven't commented out. So let me go back to here and comment this one. Now refresh Google Chrome. Oh, we have an error here, and the reason is that we've tried to change C, which was declared here, although this one is inside the local scope still, because it's declared before as constant variable, we cannot change this. Okay, so there is no reason to do that. But let us do something else here. Let us define another C and see if we have a problem. So save the code and refresh the page. As you can see, we have no problem here. So once we console.log C inside of here, which is 12, we'll be able to see the result inside of the console. So let us check the console. And as you can see, we have 12 and 18. So let us check the code once again. We have 12. So the first console.log C shows 12, which is inside of the block, and this is the local scope. This one shows 18, the second one, and it shows the global scope for C. So here the reason we had an error is that the C has not been redeclared, and because of that it's going to refer to the C which is in the global scope, and because it was constant we couldn't change this. But here, because we redeclared inside a local scope inside of the block, so we can redeclare it because it's not in the global scope, it's just inside of the block inside of the local scope. So we can redeclare it, but instead of the global scope, let's redeclare this as well. C, and here as you can see we have an error, and as you can see it says cannot redeclare block scoped variable. So but here, because we are inside of the block, there's no problem for that. So const is pretty much like let and opposite to var variables, and that's how constant variables work. Now, to end the variables section of the tutorial, I'm going to mention something about all of these variables, and that is about, for example, you have a variable called d, and then you define it to be, for example, 19, and here you declare d after defining it to be 19. So let us declare d here. Don't write declare, and instead of that you can write var d, and here as you can see, if I save this code there will be no problem. So when you want to declare the kind of variable it is, there's no problem in JavaScript if you write it after assigning a number to it. So for example, we have d equals 19, and then we declare the variable. And this might look a bit strange, but this works in JavaScript, and it might be useful in some circumstances. So let's save the code and check the Google Chrome. As you can see, we have no error here, and it totally works. We have no problem. So that's it for the variables section of our tutorial in JavaScript. And in the next sections, we're going to go after the operators.